All right, let's get started here. So, welcome to session two, and we're going to be discussing working with the client's difficult family. And before we jump into things, and before I introduce Stephanie to you, what a couple things I want to make you aware of. So, one thing I forgot to mention during last session was we have at this conference we have gamification, meaning we've got you'll see in the actual conference platform, there's a tab that says leaderboard. And so as you attend sessions, as you give feedback on each session, as you interact with our exhibitors, as you interact with others at the conference, there's a certain amount of points attached to it. And then additionally, we have a scavenger hunt where you can also get some points. So we've got different things that are hidden throughout the conference that don't seem like they quite fit in with the platform. If you click on those things, you get points. And ultimately, going into that last session tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we'll announce the top 5 winners. And we're giving away an iPad. We're giving away registration to the conference next year, a discount to the conference next year, $50 gift card, and what was the other one? Um, Apple earbuds. And so, anyways, so all that stuff going to be given away. So make sure that you're interacting on the platform. Make sure that you're giving feedback, making sure that you're joining session. Um, so I'm going to pass things over to Stephanie, and so Stephanie Parker is an experienced guardian and care manager with over 15 years of expertise working with vulnerable adults and their families. As the lead guardian at Paramount Guardianship, she specializes in supporting individuals with cognitive impairments, mental health challenges, and complex family dynamics. Stephanie's background includes extensive work in crisis intervention, elder care advocacy, and navigating legal and medical systems to ensure optimal client outcomes. She has collaborated with courts, medical professionals, and community organizations to develop guardianship strategies that prioritize dignity and autonomy. A dedicated advocate for client rights, Stephanie regularly provides training for professionals on best practices in guardianship and care management. And so it's with pleasure that I pass things over to Stephanie. So Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you guys so much. So to say I'm nervous, what I was hoping for today is that you guys can hold some questions till the end. It's not going to take me, hopefully, not take me a full hour to get through this training. And so I can answer some questions with Luke's help at the end of the presentation. So we can dive right in. So again, we're going to be talking about working with a client's difficult family, working with a client. I had done this presentation in October for the NGA, and the name wasn't working with a client's difficult family. It was actually called It's Not You, It's Your Family, but the NGA didn't like that. And so they came up with working with a client's difficult family. And so again, thank you for the introduction, Luke. I am the owner of the smallest, it's a boutique firm in New Hampshire, but I serve about 100 clients. I'm guardian for their person, so their healthcare, and I also make all of their financial decisions as either the conservator or guardian over their estate, or I also serve as the representative payee. We do estate planning. We also do care management. We also apply for all their state aid and help as well. And so we've been doing this for a while. And I love my team and the support that I have with them. And I'm also now on the NGA board, and I'm coming up to you guys in July. And so I'd love to collaborate, maybe even meet some of you in July when I'm there for a couple of days. That is where we're going to be meeting at the end of July. So we'll move right on. So I want to talk to you guys about building relationships with difficult families. So when I become a guardian for a client, I'm the end all be all. I am a third party coming in. I don't know how most of you receive your clients, but I get clients from the court. I get clients from hospitals, from nursing homes, from assisted livings. And when I receive clients, it's because things have gone very poorly. Things are not going well. The client has either been abused financially or physically abused by their family, or they have self neglect for themselves and they're not able to make decisions for themselves. And so that is when I get the case. And so the cases I get are no longer the mom and pop in a nursing home who have no children and need a decision maker. I get the very difficult cases, and that's fine. But we have to come up with strategies to work with families and to work with people in their lives that provide for challenging dynamics. And so I'm hoping that after today, we can kind of hone in on how to deal with those family members or those people that in their lives that can be a little bit more challenging to work with, and that you leave here having some understanding about communication and trust, and again, have some more tools. I do have a handout. I know Luke was going to add it on, but you guys can email me as well. I know Luke has my email. I can share it as well in the chat. Anything you guys want or any questions, or even later down the road, if you guys want to ask any other questions or even collaborate with me, that'd be great. Send me an email and we're happy to answer questions for you or tell you what's been successful for us in our business. So we're going to talk a little bit about, and I'm not going to read this all. Oh boy, I went backwards. See, Luke, I told you I'm not very good at technology. So we're going to start here. Slideshow from current slide. All right. So we're going to talk about the different types of relationships and what makes them difficult. So there's interpersonal relationships. There's going to be strained relationships. There's going to be interactions or conflicts that you're not going to know about with the family. And it's just because it's their family. My family's not perfect. I'm a social worker because of that, right? And so you're going to be coming in and there's going to be misunderstandings or this lack of communication that you're not privy to. And it's happened years and years in the past that you're going to have to work with. There's also emotional and behavioral challenges. There's family members who now either have traumatic brain injury or there's mental illness or there's dementia, and their family doesn't understand that and they're not going to understand it. And so there's high levels of stress or there's anger. And again, adding in any of those past conflicts that are now affecting their current relationship is going to be difficult. There's always, for us, there's always financial problems. Applying for aid, if someone's living in the home, that you now have to evict them and still work with them and have a good relationship, but have them leave the home because you need to provide for your client for Medicaid or sell the home to pay for the care that they need. Um, Health issues or other family tensions. Sometimes there's divorce. Sometimes their children have divorced and you're working with the parents and no one talks to each other, or maybe the mom got remarried and moved away and now there's family members in other states that you have to work with. And then there's power imbalances, right? So there's certain family members who have always been in control. I'm the eldest daughter. I am the one who's always in control of things. And there might be that shift, or there might be children who have been taking advantage of their parents and they were in control and they're not willing to kind of let that control go. And so that struggle for authority is really going to be a big issue that, again, you weren't privy to or didn't know what was going to happen when you first came into this. And so how are you able to work with these different relationships, these emotional and behavioral challenges, these external stressors of finance, or this power imbalance of I've always been in control and now I have to relinquish this control to you? So we're going to hopefully go over some of these things for you guys today. So I'm going to give you some real life examples of my own clients. Like I said, I did this presentation. It's going to be different because it's not memorized, back in October. And I got some feedback, and I just want to make sure that I explain a little bit more, especially about Marco. So I received Marco from a hospital, and the hospital called me and the judge reached out to me and said, I need your help with this case. So Marco's 70 years old. He's a male. He carries a traumatic brain injury diagnosis, but he also has a mental illness that was always prevalent before the traumatic brain injury. And no one ever dealt with that mental illness or medicated that mental illness before when he was making his own decisions. He currently lives in a long-term care or assisted living facility, and he relies on the staff for all of his activities of daily living. So all of his food, Cueing, reminders, medication, all of those things he relies on the staff for. He has type 2 diabetes, and so it's important that he follows a specific diet because his sugars are up and down. He's been hospitalized because of this before, but he has a close relationship to his sister. And when I say a close relationship, this sister is the reason why the hospital and the judge all reached out to me. Because Marco used to have in New Hampshire, it's a durable power of attorney. And his brother was the person who was making his healthcare decisions when he became unable to make his decisions. But his brother passed away. And so at this point, he doesn't have a decision maker and he needed one. And so his sister wanted to be the decision maker. So in New Hampshire, we have a surrogacy law where for 90 days, you're allowed to step up and be that person. But in those 90 days, you have to apply to be guardian. Well, during the time that she was stepping in, Marco had gone to three different homes, so different nursing homes and assisted livings, and been returned back to the hospital. And when I spoke to these different homes and I spoke to the current hospital and I spoke to the judge, basically what it comes down to is his behaviors were so great, but his sister's behaviors were greater. And the sister's behaviors were the reason why they were not welcoming him back. So he had an issue with one with his diabetes. They had to send him to the hospital. When it was time to return, they said, absolutely not. We're not taking him back because of his sister. And so we ended up taking on this case, and it's a difficult case. It's a difficult case. Marco, his personality with a traumatic brain injury and his mental illness is difficult enough, right? So we're dealing with all of the things that are Marco and making sure he has his autonomy. But we're also dealing with his sister and making sure that she's part of this care. So his sister is really angry. She went to the probate court and she said, no, I still want to be guardian. I don't want this third party. I'm his sister. And the probate court said, no, I'm sorry, we need a third party. We don't find that you're capable of doing the job. And then from there, she went to Supreme Court in New Hampshire and said, I want to be the guardian. And the Supreme Court found that the probate court law was going to stay and that I was going to remain the guardian. So coming into this case, there was already this misunderstanding with the sister. There was already this anger from the sister that she was not the guardian, and she was, like I said, very, very angry. So, she didn't trust us. She was upset with us. How do we know what we're doing? So we've had to set some really clear and concise goals and boundaries with her. We've had to let her know that Marco is his own client and his own person. He's our client, and that we're going to do what we can for the client. And again, we're setting realistic expectations. We're trying to gain her trust. We're trying to gain Marco's trust. And we're trying to work together to make sure things go well. So at first, we allowed his sister to take him to and from appointments. I would be part of those appointments. I would get calls to give consent, or I would know about it and fill out the forms ahead of time. And the sister started having some issues with this. And one of the times she called me and said, I need to take Marco to the hospital or to urgent care. Please call me back. So by the time I called her back, it had been 3 minutes, time stamped 3 minutes. She had shut her phone off. And so, as you can imagine, I don't know where Marco is. He was supposed to go to an appointment and come right back. And so, long story short, we ended up back in court, and the judge, and in New Hampshire, we have a long-term care ombudsman who's an advocate for the client, was present, and Marco's sister and Marco and the assisted living. And what was found was that, again, setting these clear boundaries with the sister was going to be important. And so this here in New Hampshire, what we did is I worked with this team, the judge, the ombudsman, myself, the assisted living, and the sister, and we created a contract. And so we have set very clear expectations of what would happen if she was to take Marco out of the facility. So this is one of the biggest pieces I wanted to clear up if you had seen me in October, is that people didn't understand what I meant about a contract. So the contract was she can always come and visit Marco, all she wanted. But if she was to take Marco out of the facility, we all collaborated to see what was the best for Marco. So some of these things in the contract, and I'm willing to share a contract with you guys if you want to see it, with all the collaboration that was put into it. There's a list of maybe 7 items, making sure that we know what time he's being picked up and dropped off. We make sure that he's not missing any of his medications. We make sure that there's no alcohol or legal drugs being given to Marco when he's gone. We make sure she's following his diet because he is a type 2 diet, he has type 2 diabetes. So we want to make sure that all these things are being followed by the contract. We're not saying she can't visit him. We're saying that if she was to take him out of the facility, here is our very clear communication. Here is our contracts. So he is safe. And that's the purpose of the contract, was keeping him safe, because he does want to see his sister. He does want to go out of the facility. And so that was the biggest piece, is making sure that he still was able to have the autonomy and go out and do things, but that he was safe. And so again, I'm willing to share this contract. Again, it was collaborated with one of the probate judges here in New Hampshire, the long-term care ombudsman, myself, the client, the assisted living, and the sister. We did have her sign it and notarize it. And as long as she continues to follow that when she takes him out, great. If not, the judge herself was the one who said there's consequences, and you won't be able to take him out until we have another hearing. And so, cross our fingers, knock on wood, things have been going really well. The contract, again, does not state she can't see him. We're not keeping him from her. We're just making sure that he is safe. So fostering open communication is huge. So I always make sure that I preface everything about communication, about making sure whatever you do is clear and concise and honest, because anything that you do or say or write can be brought back to court. Some families are incredibly litigious. Marco's family is. So everything I say and do, I have to be able to defend myself and say why I made the decision that I made. And making sure that with this communication that everybody is added. So for Marco's case, when I send an email about something that's going on with Marco, I include the assisted living, I include his sister. And if the ombudsman is involved at that point, because again, she comes in and out when things are high or low, she'll be on there too. And making sure that, we're all on the same page. Hey, he needs to go out for this appointment. Here's the reason why. If Marco didn't want me to share some of these things, I wouldn't. And I would explain that to the sister, excuse me. But as of right now, he does. And so I need to make sure that all of my communication is that everyone is on the same page, and you document. I don't know what you use for electronic medical record, but I document everything. Every email that I send, everything I do that's written, I copy and paste it. Even if it's text messages, I copy and paste it. So I always have it to rely back on. So if someone does say that's not what I heard or said, I have that available. There's practical strategies for this open communication. So having open listening, making sure that you validate their emotions, making sure you understand what they're saying and you're actively listening. Now, I speak fast. I'm from New England. It's hard to not want to jump in and say something. So I have a hard time with active listening, but that's what I try very hard to make sure that I'm understanding what they're saying before I try to answer their question. Again, clarity and conciseness. I just want to make sure what I'm saying is being understood. And I might ask it in different ways, or might ask them what they heard. Nonverbal communication. Guys, I wear my emotions on my face very, very much. So when we had the masks, it was easier to hide. But for me, I have to be careful. I'm Italian and I talk with my hands. I have a big personality, and you can see that. You can see if I'm upset or if I agree with you or if there's something going on. So I have to work on that. And then using conflict resolution techniques, which again, with constructive dialogue, we're going to be doing that as well. And then again, regular check-ins with your families. So if my client wants me to share things about the family, then I will. If there's a team meeting and my client's going to be there and wants his family involved, I let them know, hey, here's what's going on. If the client doesn't want them to know specifics, I'll check in afterwards. Hey, we had a meeting about Marco. There's been some changes in his diet. So let's chat about the next time you take him out, because there's going to be some changes in what you can feed him and etc. But again, being clear that what my client wants and what I'm sharing is appropriate as well. Building trust. This is a big one. So again, I come in as a third party. I come in as someone who, I don't work for the court, I work for myself. And so that helps. I don't go to the initial hearing for guardianship. And I found that that works better for me and my practice here in New Hampshire, because if I go to the initial hearing, they all see me as the bad guy. They all originally, like they already are going to be mad at me because I'm coming in, but they immediately see me as, oh, she's here. I kind of play on the defense. I let them know, hey, I don't know this situation. I don't know the scenario. Give me the story. Give me, what's been going on. I want the client to tell me, if they can, what's been happening. I need the family members to tell me what's going on. And I found that that helps build this trust, or builds or starts this foundation of having a good, trusting relationship with the family and the client. You can do it however you want, but for me, that's what works best, because whenever I have gone to the initial hearing, they see me as this person who works for the court, or is in collaboration with the nursing home. And again, I do work with the court and I do work with the nursing home, but I work with the family and I work with the client as well. And then addressing trust issues with a family. So I have a client now whose mother and I worked really closely together, and I built a really strong relationship with her. So the mother wanted her daughter placed in a program. We were working on it and working on it. The mom passes away. The mom passes away, and now the brother steps in. I've never met the brother. I have been guardian for this client for 2 years. I've been working closely with the mom. She passes, and now the brother steps in. I thought things were hunky dory. Little did I know that the brother was his personality is a little difficult to work with. So now I have an established relationship with the client for 2 years. I had a good relationship with mom, and now I have a brother who's coming in and sees me again as someone who's taking control and taking over. And I just had to let them know, no, I'm going to build this rapport with you. I'm going to explain what I do. I'm going to explain how I work with your sister. I'm going to explain what we've done in the last 2 years that I've been your sister's guardian, and how working with mom and with your sister, we've been able to get her into her program. She's successful with her medications. She's out in the community volunteering. So it's hard to gain that trust, but once you have it, making sure that you communicate clearly, that you set those expectations, you let them know how things are going. It's really, really important. I've had to use some de-escalation techniques with him. I've had to use some problem solving techniques with him, because emotions are heightened. And now that mom has passed away, and we're dealing with the mom's passing and what to do next and what's the next step, because he sees me as this figure that can handle that stuff. And I've had to let him know that, no, I work with a client. I can't handle mom's affairs. I don't have bank accounts with mom. I handle the client, and I handle her bank accounts, and I handle the things that she needs, her emotional support, physical support, etc. And so it's been an interesting couple of weeks with that particular client, but um, we've been sending emails, and it's going a little bit more smooth now at this point. And I'm hoping to maintain that relationship by setting boundaries and keeping to those boundaries. So identifying common ground and the shared goal. So the shared goal should be the client. That's the goal. The client and their well-being, that is for me the most important thing. I'm their guardian. I need to make sure that they're cared for, that I advocate for them, that they have everything that they could possibly need to be successful in life. And so identifying that common goal is important, and letting them know that that's my job. And aligning the client and their family objectives are hard, but again, letting them know that your client is the most important thing to you and making sure they're successful it kind of sets the tone for the family, because you're not there for any of the he said, she said. You're not there for the drama and the tea spilling. You're not there for that. You're there to help the client and make sure that if they want to be part of that decision making, if they want to be part of this client's life, that they can do so in a healthy and meaningful way. And if they can't, then finding a way to separate themselves and not being part of the everyday life of the client might be the best for the client at that time. And building a foundation to collaborate. So understanding that this is their family, this has been their family their entire life. And, this is how they've been working with their family. Maybe their family are yellers and screamers, or maybe they ignore you when they're angry and they give you the silent treatment. And so kind of going into it and knowing that this is what you might expect, and it's hard because you're not used to that. It's not your family, you haven't known them forever. And so again, building that foundation is important, and setting expectations is so important from the very beginning. I always say that I'm going to be honest with them, honest to a fault, because I need to make sure that they understand that I'm I'm going to make decisions that they might not agree with, and the reasons why I'm making those decisions if they question them. And again, every decision that I make, I can back up the reasoning. So either with a medical professional or maybe past experience, looking at the ethics from the NGA, I'm able to explain why I'm making the decision I'm making for my client. And that's super important. And, again, dealing with high emotions right now with my client whose mom's passed away. I understand there's stress, anxiety, there's grief. But again, letting them know I understand and I'm sorry that mom has passed away, but my client and her mindset is important, and working with her to make sure she's okay through the grieving process, and she's okay with the big move and the big change in her life, and letting the family know that that is my priority, which I can't say enough, is the main shared goal, making sure that she's the common goal. And I always thank my families, and I say thank you for being so thank you for caring so much about your family member. Thank you for wanting to be part of this team meeting. Thank you for being here, because if they want to be there, they want to feel that they're important. They want to feel like you listen to what they say, and they want to know that you're listening to what they're saying. So I feel like that's super, super, super important as well. So we have another client. Her name is Maria. It's a completely different situation from my other clients that I've talked about. So when I first met Maria, she was spicy. She was able to tell me where the dog died. She was able to give me all the information about her. Her husband had passed away. She was in a hospital. She owned her own home. She had lived a big, meaningful life. She was 80 years old. She's a little bit older now, and she carries a diagnosis of dementia. So now we've had her for a few years. She now is in a nursing home. Her dementia she's declined. So she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know how old she is, and she doesn't know that she has children. But before her dementia declined, she was able to tell me all of the things that she loved her wine, that she loved her animals. She used to breed dogs. She was showing dogs. She again had this big, beautiful life. She never shared about her children. She told me she had 3 children from her first marriage. She told me that she didn't keep in touch with any of her children. She never really went into why. But when we cleaned out her home, there was no pictures of her children, none, 0 pictures of her children, of her 3 children. I found tons of pictures of dogs and from the past. I found tons of traveling photos. Um, we made her a picture book that she can have with her at the nursing home now to look through with staff and with the social worker from hospice. And it's all pictures that aren't a family. They're of friends and animals and traveling. And so she has 3 children. And out of these 3 children, one of them has been in touch with me. One of them has wanted information about about her. Now, none of them wanted to be her guardian when she first needed a guardian. None of them. None of them were interested in being a decision maker. And they all kind of alluded to the fact that she wasn't a good mom, that when she got divorced from their father, I don't know what the relationship is with her father, but that she remarried and she chose her husband, her second husband, over her children. They all live on different sides of the country, and one of them lives in Florida, and she does want information. She wants to know what's going on with Maria. She wants to know how she's doing. And it's been difficult because when I first met Maria, she didn't say anything about her kids. She didn't even say that she again, I have kids, but it is what it is. She never said she wanted them involved. And so it's really been difficult. And I've had to ask for advice. I've had to get the ombudsman involved. I've had to talk to some of my coworkers that work with me because this daughter really does care about her mom, and she doesn't want anything to do with her finances. She just wants to know she's okay and being taken care of. So I've decided with some guidance that I am going to share some information. I don't share everything. I share basic things. I shared that she had a decline, that we changed her diet, and so she could understand that her progression of dementia was changing. I shared, that she's having a harder time swallowing, that when she, had trouble with her memory. I've shared if she's gone to the hospital, not the diagnosis and the specifics around the hospitalization, just that she went, and or maybe that she had a fall, just basic things, because the daughter is wanting to know. And again, Maria never said, do not tell my family. And so now with the mom's decline, I feel better because Maria sends her gifts and the mom smiles when she sees pictures of her child. And so it's been, Maria's case has been really, really hard because this is the first family who honestly their intention was just because they cared and loved their mom and wanted nothing to do again with finances, but just wanted to know how she was doing for their peace of mind. Maybe they've done some therapy or some work on themselves, which is awesome. But she just wanted to know that her mom was okay. And I get random messages from her. She's very sweet, and she'll say, sent my mom a card for her birthday. Can you please put it in her room? Sent my mom, something for Mother's Day. She loved bears and dogs. And so she sent her like a stuffed animal dog, and she made a sweatshirt for her and asked what size she was so she could, put a bear on the sweatshirt, which she wears. And I've taken a picture of her in the sweatshirt and sent it down to the daughter. And the daughter was just grateful to have that information. I don't know much about the scenario beforehand. I'm doing what I think is in the best interest of my client for Maria. She smiles, and again, we've done a video call with the daughter, and when she had her memory still, and she said, "Oh, that's so and so," and again, doesn't remember all the ins and outs because of the dementia, but she smiled and was happy. Now, if we had a different reaction, then we would have stopped doing all of those things. But at this point, we do feel that we're doing what's in the best interest of Maria. And again, just seeing her smile and seeing her happy and sitting with her stuffed animal on her lap and knowing it's from her daughter, that really was great. And again, I don't share everything. I share what I think is appropriate for the daughter to know. And also, when my clients are declining, that also becomes a time where I reach out to family if they're involved or not, because there's been so many times where family has reached out to me and I've never heard from them before. I didn't even know that they had a brother. And I want to shake them and say, where have you been? Like, who are you? I've never heard from you. And now that they've passed, you want information about them, and I can't do that because that's not professional. but but I feel it's important to let the family members know if there's been a decline or if they've had a bad fall. Working in this field, we can kind of expect things to happen when we see a decline, or we see someone fall and break their hip and we know that they can't have surgery. We know what's going to happen. We can expect If they go on hospice, that they have 6 months or less to live, which I have clients who've been on hospice for years, but I want to make sure the family is aware of that as well. And so that's a personal preference for me. And when that's worked well, um, again, letting them know, but to a degree, what's appropriate. So everyone has heard of SMART goals. And if you haven't, I listed them out here. I mean, everything you've ever done about goal planning, they talk about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So for me, it's really setting up clear and achievable objections. So letting the family know, letting the client know what you're going to do is super, super important, and letting them know that the goals are aligned with the client and the family goals. So, for instance, if my client has a home and they want to go home to their home and they have the money to have private care at the home, but the family is saying, no, they need to go to a nursing home. Um, I have to align what's in my client's goal and what's appropriate for my client, and setting goals that are something that are achievable and capable. So if my client has a home and can care, has a team that can come in that we can afford to care for them at home to live out the rest of their life, then you better believe that that's something that we're going to do. We're going to make that goal a reality. If the family doesn't like it, that's difficult to deal with, but explaining to them why and how we're doing it and letting them know it's something that we can do and it's important to the client is super, super important. Um, so so there's a lot of conflict when it comes to that, to change, right? So for the client, sometimes they can't go home. They can't go home because they don't have the resources to care for themselves at home, but the family's adamant they need to go home. Well, the family can't afford to pay for it. And I let them know it's in here in New Hampshire, it's $42 an hour for private home care to come into the home, and you're stuck at that rate. And it doesn't, that's the cheaper rate. It goes up from there. Overnight, it's higher. And again, the family's angry that you're going to sell the family home to care for their mother or father, but you kind of have to break it down. Well, your mom and dad can't afford to live in their home and provide for the care that they need because their insurance won't cover that, and you can't afford that, and you can't take care of them. And that's why I'm the guardian, because you're not able to do those things because of your own life and your own livelihood. And so that resistance and kind of breaking it down to honestly showing them like a spreadsheet or writing it down for them, here's much it will cost. And then letting them know that if they move into a facility and we sell the home, here's how long they can live in the facility before we have to get them on state help. A lot of the time when it comes to that, it's because they don't want their family home to be gone, and they also don't understand that the family home needs to be sold for their parents to live. So that's another big thing. Well, my mom wants me to have the house. Well, great. I would love for you to have the house, but unfortunately, your mom needs 24/7 care, and that costs $12,000 a month. If you can't pay $12,000 a month, and she doesn't have retirement, and her social security is definitely not $12,000 a month, and there's no pension, she needs to sell the home. She needs to go somewhere that she can get the care she needs. And a lot of the time, that is a huge stressor. And that's where that resistance and that conflict comes into place for us. But explaining that it's the client's individual need. And again, I understand the preference of the family getting the house, but my client needs to be taken care of. Unfortunately, that stinks. It really does. But my client needs the care. So then, there's different problem solving techniques. I work with the family to come up with the solutions. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the family says, no, my mom really wanted to save the house. I'll pay. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for her to go to care. I'll take on that burden of paying. And so we've been able to work with the court and set that up where the family member does pay. But if they stop paying, then again, we sell the house and things like that. But brainstorming with them and may come up with solutions that you didn't think of. And then problem solving frameworks and family dynamic. There's a lot of families who everyone wants all the information, and then there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so what I'll do is I'll set one person in charge in the family that I tell things to, and then it's the telephone line from there. Or I have an email and everyone's on the email, and I let them know if this person's in crisis, I'm not responding to every email and every phone call. I'll update you when I can. But that, letting them know that that's how I'm going to answer their questions, or letting them know that this person is the key point person, is super important for me and for my client and in the family. And again, setting that from the beginning is super great, especially when they have 7 children. You pick one key point person. Cultural sensitivity. So understanding their diverse backgrounds. We have had a client who has a different religion than her family members. So she has children and they all grew up in this certain religion, and none of the children have decided to remain with this religion. But this particular religion does not allow for blood transfusions. And so understanding that cultural piece of her religion and understanding and respecting that is really important for her. From before she had dementia to now, who she can't say anymore, I'm still going to be following that rule because that was her life. She grew up with this religion. She raised her family in this religion. Her brothers and sisters, everyone is involved in this religion. Her children are not, and her children don't understand why I'm following this religion for her. She went to the hospital and she had to have a surgery. And I told the hospital, no, she cannot have a blood transfusion. They do this really cool thing now where they can actually use your own blood and they can regenerate it to use again. And I was totally on board with that because that, after speaking to someone in the religion to make sure that was okay, I was 1000% on board with that. The family was adamantly against, nope, give her a blood transfusion if she needs it. We want to keep her alive. Again, she's in her 80s, quality of life, etc. But I let them know that no, this is her autonomy. This is what she wanted, and I'm going to follow that for her. And then again, making things inclusive in the environment for their clients and families and addressing those cultural differences with respect. They were very angry with me. They hollered and screamed on the phone. And actually now I get phone calls from people calling and screaming at me all the time. And my husband's like, why do you do this job? And I just explain, they're upset, they're mad, they're stressed out, they love their family member. Most of the time they're scared, and just explaining to them why I'm doing something and why it's important, and setting those expectations, and helping them deal with that stress in the best way I can. And then I really explain to them, I'm the guardian. I have to make this decision for your loved one. I respect your input, but I will, take it all in, and let it ruminate, but I'm going to make a decision in the best interest of the client. I know I've said that a million times. So conclusion. So I told you I wasn't going to go the whole hour. So before we move on to the conclusion, I really find that having my client have their autonomy works best. If my client can tell me what they want, that is amazing. Like I will cherish and accept that, and I will run with it, because every time I've had to go to court and there's a family member there saying, Stephanie won't do X, Y, and Z, I have the client with me. And the judge wants to know that I'm preserving the client's autonomy, that the client is still able to make decisions. I'm not the end all be all when it comes to every single thing, that the client has a voice and that I'm protecting their voice, obviously to a point, right? I'm not going to let them do really horrible, significant things to their lives. But I am going to let them choose if they want to go out with their brother or sister, if they want information shared with their family, if they have a preference. I'm going to let them have that. I had a family member who did not get along with her daughter and didn't want her daughter to have anything after she passed away. And so it was one of those things where the daughter fought us, but the judge ruled in our favor and said, no, she's allowed to have her autonomy. But that's it. That's really the end. I hope that I was able to help with with my clients and my stories and a little bit more about working with families, that you can have a good communication style with your families and document everything. Please document everything that you do. But any questions or concerns, please reach out. And if there's questions now, I'd love to help answer them.
Hey, Stephanie, it looks like Mary is raising her hand and has a question. And so, Mary, I can actually allow you to talk. And so, let me let me do that. And you're okay to talk if your mute is off. Are you there, Mary? And if not, we'll go to the chat comments.
Oh, there were chat comments. See, I didn't even have the chat up. It was going to distract me.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So yeah. So no, a lot of a lot of people like your contract. They want a copy of it, and so
Okay.
a lot of feedback on that. Elizabeth shared, I really appreciate having at least one family member who wants to be involved in the care of the individual. I consider the family member a part of the team supporting the individual. Um, Jamie shared, as professionals, we come into people's lives for a reason. We don't know the history of the family. We don't know if our client um, was horrid to their children or their family in the past. If family is missing with someone's life, there's a reason, sometimes attributable to our client and not the family. I try not to make assumptions when family is absent.
Hmm.
Claire shared, the person we work with is not the person they grew up with most of the time. Families fall apart for a reason.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard when we have divorced parents fighting over the adult child. A lot of comments on family dynamics. And so here's one from Chick. So sometimes clients may change preferences, even religious preferences. When
Hmm.
there's a health, life-threatening crisis, how do you know that client wants to now have a transfusion but can't communicate that anymore? People can
Sure.
change their
So,
mind. You try to reaffirm their original choice, and if so,
mhm.
how?
So in the case of my client, she's my only one who's had this come up. But I was able to not only talk to her family, but I talked to her church and I talked to people in her community that knew her. And they actually were actually more involved than her family was. Like they're the ones who would visit her more. They're the ones who would take her to service. They're the ones who would email and say, hey, we notice when we visit her, she needs more clothes. Can we buy her more clothes? So, I was able to communicate with her church community and her family. And so for her, I know that she's had previous surgeries in the past and she elected not to have a transfusion and she's not able to tell me now that she does. So I have to go based on her past preferences. Yes, we have our ethics for NGA, but I also have ethics in New Hampshire. We have our own RSA that I have to follow as well. And so if I have to go in front of the judge, I would have to explain that. And I would say, based on her past performance and what she's dealing with right now in terms of her surgery, I had to make this decision. And I made it based on speaking to the medical team, her religious family, and then her personal family.
Awesome. And then lots of other comments just saying thank you, thanks for sharing, thanks for these tough cases, props to you, um, and and then another, get me a copy of that contract, please.
Yeah, and again, I want to preface like the contract does not mean they cannot visit because that was the one feedback I got from October was, I can't believe you don't let them visit. I said, no, that's not it. The contract is if they want to go out. And again, I didn't just come up with it willy-nilly. It was something that the judge and the ombudsman and myself and the team really collaborated on to make that client like be successful outside in the community.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, that's sounds like a great ending point. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing all of this. You'd mentioned that there's those documents that you wanted to share, and the outline that's all available now in the documents folder on the platform, so people can go and access that. So make sure you do that if that would be helpful to you following the session. Um, As far as feedback, just another reminder that you have an option to give feedback to Stephanie following the session. In that same box that you had clicked on, join the session. There's an option to give feedback there, and so encourage you to do that. Just two simple questions, and and that is it. Any last things? I hope I didn't cut you off there at the end, Stephanie.
No, I'll just send you, I'll redact the information, but I'll send you a copy of a contract. It changes per client. So you just need to understand that it does change per the client, but I'll send you a redacted copy of a contract.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. So next session starts at 10:30, and so we'll see you back here at 10:30. Thanks again, Stephanie,
Thank you
and
guys.
have a
All
good
right.
day. Or see you soon,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.